Well, welcome once again. This is the Doctor of Digital at the Doctor of Digital podcast. And once again, we bring you an exciting episode. Really looking forward to my next guest, because most people don't run for education office after building a healthcare company. Dr. Nelva Lee did because she saw the same systemic failure in both. I'm Mick, the Doctor of Digital, and this episode is about why access drives everything. At one point, Dr. Lee explains why interpreting language taught her far more about power than any policy and textbook ever could. And with that, I want to be able to introduce and welcome Dr. Nelva Lee to the program. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic and very excited about getting you on this program. And I've been looking forward to this for a long time for all kinds of reasons. Because before we talk about education policy or the campaign, I want to start earlier. When you were working as a medical interpreter, what did you see about systems that most people never notice?
Got it. So actually, I was a manager of interpreting services. So when I was at the Grady Health System, I was the director of health patient advocacy. And one of the programs in my department was medical interpreting. And so we provided services to the entire system. And so I both hired my interpreters as well as outsourced some of the rare languages. But I really saw that there was just a misconception throughout the system, even back in those days, as to the need for an interpreter, right? They were saying, oh,
Sure.
you move to the US, you should already learn the language. And while that is true, at a basic level, a lot of people that come, immigrants or have you, or people are just visiting, right? Travelers that come to our healthcare institutions, they might be able to speak a passable English enough to get food at a restaurant or get around the community. But when it comes to healthcare, you have to add to that a layer of medical jargon that even most English speakers can't get through. And so you have this whole power dynamic where some members of the healthcare community don't want to provide the service because they think it's not necessary, right? Because they're thinking if you're here in the US, you should speak English, and therefore we should not have to provide the service. But really and truly, providers know that if they don't provide this service, they're actually going to end up spending way more money in diagnostics, right? Because if you're not understanding, or you're not understanding your patient, or your patient's not understanding you, their chances of liability skyrockets because you're not able to provide them with the correct service. I'll give you an example. Once is, in English, just one time. If you write it out, it's once in Spanish, right? So if you're sending a prescription with someone, you tell them, take this once a day, and they take it 11 times a day, just think about the implications. And that's just a very simple example. I mean, that is exponential when you think about all the kinds of medical interactions that take place with our patients on a regular basis. And so if you do not have a qualified medical interpreter in room, as is required by the law, by civil rights laws, you're going to end up having increased liability and having to take all these unnecessary tests just to determine what's wrong with the patient, whether you could have easily determined that in a history with a medical interpreter present.
Got it. Since this is really in the midst of a really important campaign that's going on, and Georgia is a really critical state, most people realize this by now. What's the single biggest misconception voters have about education in Georgia that your healthcare background lets you correct?
Okay. Well, I'm very fortunate that my healthcare background was able to bridge education, in that realizing that there weren't enough training programs available for medical interpreters, I created my own. So I was a CEO of a vocational school teaching bilingual individuals how to become medical interpreters. So just because you're bilingual does not make you a medical interpreter. You have to learn legal jargon. You have medical jargon, rather. You have to learn confidentiality rules. You have to learn where to stand, how to speak, how to memorize and retain information. So all of those things are what you learn in the program.
Mhm.
Because I had that program for 20 years, I've kind of moved on since then, and I'm now focused just on building the services. But I was a CEO and founder of this program for 20 years. And what I can tell you that is there's a need, and not just in Georgia, unfortunately, but across the nation,
Mhm.
and there's a need for more vocational schools. We have these youngsters from K to 12, and then we're pushing them out into the world completely unprepared, right? If they're not college bound, they have nothing to fall back on. And you know that a high school diploma nowadays gets you a job. That's all it does. Gets you a job, not a career. I feel that
Mhm.
we should really take that, invest in these youngsters at the time that they most need it, right? From their sophomore year to their senior year in high school, and preparing them for an actual workforce readiness, a career readiness track. And I believe this is helpful even if you are college bound, because most college bound students honestly go to school without a declared major because they have no idea what they want to do when they grow up. Or even if they do have an idea, sometimes they change their mind. Oftentimes they'll change their mind, and you've
True.
already spent that. Only increases the length of time that they're staying in college, by the way, and adding a year to an extra 2 years. And that's thousands of dollars that is wasted. So if we can prepare them while we have them in the K 12 system for that career readiness, we're doing everybody a service, not only the students, but also their families and society as a whole, because we have a lot of graduating high school with nothing to fall back on.
Yeah, the times have changed, and this is where the market's got to change, education's got to change, and it's really assisting people. The other thing is talking about in the midst of this campaign that you're a part of, kind of an interesting twist here. You have an audio journal, so I'm curious. So, what percentage is the campaign focus or versus your broader journey? Because I'm sure there's other things you have in mind as well.
Got it. Well, as you know, I love to write books about my journeys. Every time I have a challenge that I've overcome, I'll write a book about it. So I've got several books that are on my campaign website. But the journal really was intended for me to be able to capture the moment and capture the essence of my campaign in real time.
Mhm.
So I have an audio journal that I'm keeping, and then I just basically talk about the campaign, the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, who I met, you know, how I feel about certain, a certain task that I have to. As you know, when you're campaigning, there's so many different things that you have to accomplish. You have to meet the voters. You have to meet the constituents and the stakeholders. You have to do speeches. You have to make phone calls and fundraise and all of these different roles and obviously all the marketing and all of that goes into it. So all of these things require different skill sets, right, of the candidate. And so I'm just using my audio journal as a way to kind of track how I'm feeling and just in real time what is happening in the campaign. And hopefully when it's all done, said and done, and I'm successful, I'll be able to write a memoir about it.
Yeah, there are some really good books about campaigns, but it's unusual. I think it's a different track to find the actual candidate really authoring her way through a campaign. So that's kind of a different twist. And in terms of post-election, maybe this is where the audio journal is going and encapsulating some of the campaign. What's the leadership platform that you want the book to build for you?
Well, really and truly, one of the reasons I'm running for office is that there's a dearth of leadership, especially when it comes to education here in the state of Georgia. We have,
Yeah.
under the current superintendent, he has been in office 11 going on 12 years, and we have declined in our national rankings under him. We're 38th out of 50 nation right? And those are not good statistics. Mississippi passed us, okay? 70% of our fourth graders are not proficient in reading. 76% of our eighth graders are not proficient in math. And these are both declines under Richard Woods. And so we are lacking leadership when it comes to education here in the state of Georgia. So that is really the reason why I'm running. And so obviously the book is going to talk about that, as far as, the need for more people of integrity and more people of values to step into these roles. But I'm not one to just sit on the sidelines and just complain about it. I feel that if you have a valid complaint, that you should do something about it, whether it's voting or whether it's casting your hat in the fray.
You mentioned, I want to go back to a point they had made, you've already written. So that's something, a multi-book author, which is something I work with authors all the time. And I think it's very good strategy. And you've approached each book project and what you've learned about thought leadership. So could you tell us a little bit about what you have done already? Because you've done a number of books already.
Yes. So I've written several books, like I said, it's usually from an aftermath of going through a very difficult situation and being able to look back on it and having some lessons learned and wanting to share those lessons learned with others so that they can shorten their period of having to experience some of the pain that I've been through. So one of the books I wrote is called Stay and Fight. It's really a marriage book, and it talks about really from a biblical perspective, what a wife really can do to enhance her marriage, enhance her family, and really just be support to that. One of the tidbits that I found very useful is that, a lot of women, when they're going through their menopausal years, you don't hear about this much, but they have hormones that decouple. So when you first have or first get married and first have children, you have these hormones that help you to really bond, oxytocin and others that help you to bond with your spouse and your children. Well, those hormones basically detach from you when you get into your menopausal years, making it really difficult to stay married. And so oftentimes women and husbands are having to completely, calibrate, what the marriage is. And obviously, so that was one of those books that was an eye opener for me as I was going through it, and then wanting to really help others behind me to have a little bit clearer understanding of what was happening. I've written other books. One of the other books that I've written is called Be the Superhero of Your Story. And I wrote that in the aftermath of COVID, when I saw so many people with depression, as you know, skyrocket, drug and alcohol abuse skyrocketed as a result of COVID. And it was really, I thought, a need for training, right? And how to recharacterize and problems that we might be facing. One of my favorite quotes from Tony Robbins is not happening to you, it's happening for you. And just that one little word, changes how you see your life and how you see the things that you're facing, or the circumstances that you're having to go through. And just really, that book is all about teaching people that, you can be the superhero, but superheroes need challenges to show their superpowers. And so that is really all about embracing the challenges that come your way and realizing that they're only there to shine a light onto your super strengths and your specialness, really.
And could you provide the titles and what else? Because you got some other books as well.
I do. I have a called Victorious, also, and let's see. I'm thinking of all of my books. I've got them all on my website, drnelvalee.com. A Hope in a Future. It's a book that I wrote about the adoption process from the foster care system, because my husband and I adopted a little girl from the foster care system. And that was a challenge initially. And so just really encouraging others who might be thinking about adoption, who might be thinking about wanting to help those children in the foster care system. And, this book is about going in it with your eyes wide open, but realizing that it's a very much needed for more people and more people of values to step up to the plate.
So, Doctor, with all of this, I'm very curious. I think a lot of listeners are as well. CEO, family, all these things, and running for office. How do you possibly find the time to do something which is time consuming as writing and having the dedication and the passion to stick with it, which is a difficult process of writing?
So I really and truly, like I mentioned, my books are all about going through an issue and being able to have some lessons learned. And so whenever I start to write a book, it's usually a compelling need to get this information out. So it's not, I start and I don't finish until it's done. So usually it takes me several months, but it's just this compelling need to get this information on paper. I call my books my written testimonies. So if you're familiar with the scripture that says we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. And so I feel I have just this compelling need to get it out there. When it comes to balancing my time, I'm very, very protective of my time. So I don't do time wasters. I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't engage in a lot of social media. I really try to prioritize my time. Even when it comes to volunteering, I believe in volunteering, but I just make sure that whatever time I volunteer has to not interfere with my family time. And so I'm just very, very proactive with my time. One of my favorite books about time management is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And if you follow that book to the T, you will find that you have more time because it's all about putting things in their proper quadrants. And so if you're spending your time on the important things, you're spending a lot less time on the non-important things. And I think a lot of times it's very easy to waste time. It really is. But if you're very diligent about making sure that your time is productive and not wasted, you'll find that you have a lot of time available.
In terms of the books as they came out, a lot of listeners want to know what the process is like, and there are numerous publishing options out there today. So there are traditional publishers, there's hybrid publishers, there's self-publishing. And could you walk us through your thought process on the pros and cons and why you decided to publish as you have?
So I self-publish on Amazon, and I have consulted with many publishers in the past. And obviously, to be able to publish with a large conglomerate where they pay you, up front, you have to have a huge following on social media or a very high name recognition, right? So if you don't have those two things, then are paid to market and edit and all of that. Some, content creation over the what the book cover looks like, etc. I chose not to do that. I consulted with several, and I had all these different quotes, and I thought, you know what? It's all about getting my message out there. I wasn't really writing books to make money per se, and so that is why I chose to self-publish. When I'm on podcasts, I mention my books, but really and truly, my books are there for eternity. And I believe that the legacy is there. And anyone that wants to learn from those books will be able to find them and learn from them. But my objective wasn't necessarily to make a living from my books.
I see. And, delving into the campaign, because we've mentioned it, could you tell us something about, I think a lot of people who are following the country today realize that Georgia is a lot of ways a battleground state, and it's a really critical state for so many reasons. But can you talk about Georgia specifically and tell us about how, especially your campaign and why you're running and what is it about Georgia that Georgia needs and the country needs?
Got it. Well, we became a battleground state because of all the influx of people from the north and even from there where you're at in California. So the cost of living in Georgia is very, very reasonable compared to other states. We have very
Right.
favorable weather. I call it the Goldilocks weather because we don't have the hurricanes of Florida. We don't have the snowstorms of the north. We don't have the tornadoes as bad as the Midwest. So it's really Goldilocks in so many ways. And so because of that, we've gotten so many transplants. And when you have a lot of influx of transplants, it's going to change the makeup. So Georgia was for many years a solid red state, right? But now it's purple. It's very much a purple state. So you have a lot of people in the perimeter of Atlanta that are the transplants, and then you have the rest of the state that's pretty much still very, very much red. And so for those reasons, it is a battleground state, and all eyes are on battleground states. So we have a red, Republican, and most of the legislature, the majority of the legislature is red. But then you have, our two senators who are Democrats. And so because of that, we are in the spotlight. Now, I did not run because of those things. I ran because of an internal desire to make a difference. As I mentioned, our state, when it comes to education, we're falling behind. And if someone is in office and is giving you those results, it's been in office going on 12 years, and his results speak for themselves, right? Would you give someone a promotion? Would you rehire someone if they were not producing the results that you did? And these aren't just, frivolous results. We're talking about the future of our children's education, the future of our nation, and specifically our state in Georgia, the future of our future leaders, right? Whether or not they're going to be critical thinkers and whether or not they're going to be able to properly do the job, take care of the tasks that they have to take care of. So, like I said, I don't like standing on the sidelines. If I feel that something needs to change, I believe that you should be the change that you wish to see in the world. That's a famous quote by Gandhi, by the way. And so I prayed about it, talked to my family, and made that decision. And so it's not an easy process. As I mentioned, there's so many different things that goes into campaigning and putting your name out there, putting yourself out there for criticism. But somebody has to do it. So.
Well, in some ways, you have an ideal background in given a CEO educational background. I mean, these are all kind of, feathers in your cap, so to speak. Could you get a larger picture than we talked about Georgia? And what would you say the direction of the country is too? Because clearly we're in this kind of whole, transitional state between blue and red states and people. So could you talk about how this impacts the country, you think?
I believe it does, because politics usually something that it's considered a dirty job, right? It's one of those jobs that a lot of people just don't really want to get into because of the attacks on themselves,
Yes.
potential attacks on your family, and it's a thankless job, right? You might be doing a really great job, but if one person has a complaint, that is their world, that is their reality, and they're going to make it known. And so it does require, I believe, a nice balancing act between civic duty and also tough skin, really tough skin. And it's just not for everybody. And I understand that. But what I want to encourage your listeners is you can't complain then, right? You can't sit on the sidelines and complain about the state of our nation, complain about politicians being, crooked or corrupt if you're not willing to do something about it. Now, one thing that I believe will make a huge difference nationwide on the state of politics is term limits on the federal, state, and local levels. If we have term limits, we just don't have this issue with politicians being too cozy with lobbyists, right? They're not being bought. Or politicians, in the case of my superintendent of schools, that are just sitting in positions where they're not really making effective changes, right? So at some point, you need to have new blood coming into those positions with new ideas and new energy. And so if we keep it on a rotating basis, we'll get that. And I think that our founding fathers wanted that for us. Yes. I don't believe they envisioned professional politicians. And I can tell you right here, right now, that I will only serve 2 terms in this. If I'm elected, I would only serve 2 terms. And I believe we need to cap everyone from the federal government, senators, congressmen, all the way to the state legislators. We need to cap them to 2 terms. That's it, right? Because that allows for new blood and competition to enter into the race. And I believe we'll have people of integrity, because many people come in to politics with integrity and leave without it. Why? Yes. Because politics corrupts, power corrupts. And so that is why I'm making that pledge. I do not want to stay there too long to be corrupted, frankly. But I do want to go in and make some positive changes for our children.
It's very wise. Lord Acton said, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But you made a real key point about what the founders had in mind. They did not see that politicians would make a career. It was a continual change all the time. So I'm wondering if, since your background is in education as well, could you talk about the youth and where do you see young people and how their place is in this country currently?
So I think that we can make a huge difference in our young people right now is if, as their parents, as their grandparents, we limit their social media access. Social media is really causing so much anxiety and depression into our young people. And that is a shame. And it's also, by the way, all the time on their devices is causing devices induced ADHD. So we need to limit their time on devices, limit their time on social media, really, and it's for their sake. Now, I can tell you that we have seen pockets of revival of young people really getting fired up about God, about being Christians. And I say pockets because you hear little pockets of popping up here and there, but they're not uniting. Like, we need a real fire of the whole nation where we see that. But we can pray for that, right? God gives us the directive in Chronicles, right? If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and I will do it. And I believe that we can do that. We have the power to bring about revival nationwide.
Awesome, because there are some signs in that direction. Turning Point USA and some other organizations seem to be saying reviving something among young people. So that's certainly a possibility. You know, as we start to close out the interview, you've talked about your books, the campaign, and all those things. So I definitely want to give you an opportunity to plug what you can. And of course, people want to know more about you and your campaign and what you're doing currently. So could you provide where they can get the books, where they can get a hold of you, your website, and all the contact information if they want to follow up?
Definitely. So my main campaign is drnelvalee.com. That's my main website, rather. That's drnelvalee.com. And you can find on there my speeches, my platform speeches, interviews such as this one. I also have all of my books, links to my books there, as well as links to my social media. So if you're in the state of Georgia and you want to follow along to where I'm going to be doing speeches, I always put that on my Facebook events page. And so on that website, you'll be able to link to my Facebook events page as well. But really and truly, you know, if you're in the state of Georgia, I would love to have your vote. But if you're not in the state of Georgia, including those that are in the state of Georgia, I would covet your prayers, right, to cover my campaign. And if you'd like to donate, you're welcome to do that as well.
Yes, got lots of great information on the website, so I'd highly encourage everybody to take a look at it. Doctor, thank you very much for taking out some time. It's really important that there are people who are stepping up to the plate, which certainly that you are, and I'd really admire all the things that you stand for and what you can do for the country. So I encourage everybody to get more information and to follow you. So thank you for taking some time out today. It's been a great interview. I've learned a lot, hopefully other people as well, too, for the listeners. But thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. So I hope that you're as excited about the campaign, because it gives me some thought that there are some good things coming and good people out there. So, if you're listening to the podcast and you want to know more about me and my background, perhaps I can assist as well. Connect on LinkedIn, Dr. G. Mick Smith, the Doctor of Digital, PhD, and also follow all the things that I'm doing as well, too. I want to thank the supporters, the publishers of both Burning America and On Track, Ian Hunter, for the support of the program. All of those things are available on Amazon. So until next time, hopefully you've listened and learned. We'll see you next time. This is Dr. Digital signing off. Deus Volt.